In this video, I'm going to go over 5 questions to ask before booking your island tour. For more Hawaii videos, make sure you're subscribed and click that notification bell so you're alerted every time we post a new video. Aloha, I'm Mariam, and this is Yes to Hawaii. We make Hawaii videos, take the guesswork out of planning your trip. It's your first time visiting the island and you want to see as much as possible. Or you're a return visitor and you want to explore more of the island. But you've also heard how bad traffic is here on Oahu. In this video, I'm going to go over 5 questions to ask before booking your island tour. As always, I'll leave timestamps in the description box below, so feel free to skip around the video for the parts that you came here for. Number 1, how do you like to travel? Number 2, what do you want to do and see? Comparing quantity versus quality. Number 3, what type of vehicle? Number 4, what's included? And number 5, where does it actually stop? I'll go over each question and why it's important so you can make the best decision for yourself and your family or friends or whoever you're traveling with. Or if you're a solo traveler. These questions are geared for island tours on Oahu, but you can adapt these questions to apply for island tours on the neighbor islands as well. As for island tours on Oahu, they typically start around 7 or 8 in the morning and run until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. These island tours will typically allow you to circumnavigate most of Oahu in one day. It's a great sampler to see everything that you want to see in one day and possibly get a rental car the next day to go back to the specific spots that you like and spend more time there. Island tours are also great because you don't have to deal with traffic or getting a rental car. And if you think about it, you're actually reducing traffic by doing an island tour, because for every island tour that has multiple visitors, that's less rental cars on the road. So question number 1. How do you like to travel? For some people, they like exploring an area completely on their own. They enjoy driving in an unfamiliar area and figuring it out as they go. Or perhaps you're traveling with kids, and some of them may get antsy on longer road trips, so you want the flexibility to shorten or lengthen the island tour or trip as you see fit. To some, getting lost in a new city is part of the adventure. Some people enjoy thoroughly researching what city or area they're going to and exploring everything at their own pace. For some, they only have 1 or 2 days maximum to do any sightseeing, and they want to maximize their time to see as much as they can in as little time possible. For me personally, I'm kind of a hybrid of these two things. Depending on where I'm going and how much research I've done, I do like to explore completely on my own. However, I also enjoy the convenience and done for you, ready to go island tour where I can just show up and someone can show me all the major points of interest in a specific area. It makes it easy and worry-free. If I'm a solo traveler, I'll typically lean more towards island tours versus going through the hassle of getting a rental car on my own and figuring out my own itinerary. Or if I'm traveling internationally and I don't have an international driver's license, sometimes an island tour is just the easier way to go. Question number 2, what do you want to do and see? So let's compare quantity of stops versus quality of stops. If quantity is important to you, a general island tour might be the best option because those allow short stops at multiple destinations and you learn a lot about each different spot along the way. If you're looking to do a general island tour, this is the island tour that I would recommend, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. This island tour is in a mini coach bus and also takes you a waterfall that you could swim in if you would like. Or perhaps is quality more important to you, as in the number of stops is less relevant and the amount of time you're able to spend at fewer stops is more important to you. Or perhaps you only want to focus on specific areas of the island. For example, if you wanted to focus only on the North Shore or perhaps the east coast of the island. Also, what kinds of things do you want to do? If you are leaning away from sightseeing and you're more into activities, you might like an activity-based island tour. One that I'd recommend is the Surf Bus. They focus on the North Shore and they go to the same waterfall as the island tour I just mentioned, but they also take you into Haleiwa Town. While you're in Haleiwa Town, you can explore the shops, the art galleries, everything that's there. You can also choose to stand up paddleboard or kayak down Honolulu River, which is super fun. You have a lot less stops on this tour as it focuses just on one area of the island, which is the North Shore. Or perhaps you're looking to do a shorter tour and you want to focus just on one area of the island. I recently did this tour, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. It's a 5-hour tour that focuses on the east coast of the island. It's a half-day trip starting around 8 in the morning and ending around 1 p.m. For some people, they would prefer shorter half-day activities rather than a long, full-length day. If that's the case, and you want to focus on the quality of stops, less stops, and focusing more time, that's something to think about for your island tour. There isn't a right or a wrong answer here. These are just questions that I want you guys to think about when you're looking and researching on what island tours you'd like to do. If you made it this far, what are some sites on Oahu that you've seen or are looking to see soon? Comment down below. Question number 3. What type of vehicle is the tour on? This is probably one of the most important questions to ask. Previously, when I worked as a concierge and I've done over a dozen island tours for work, this is something that I'd often overhear guests say to each other. Oh, I could never do an island tour. Those big bus tours, there's so many people on the tour. Well, yes and no. While you can't predict how many people are going to be booked on a tour, you can find out what is the maximum number of people that would be on the tour based on the size of the vehicle. Granted, there's tons of different vehicles, but for simplicity purposes, there's 3 main vehicles for organized tour buses. Number 1, we have the motor coach bus. So these motor coach buses are the Greyhound size, school bus size that accommodate about 50 or so people, and this is what people typically think of when they think of island tours. Second, there's a mini coach. Those typically hold about 25 people. I went on a mini coach tour recently on an island tour to check out the entire island and stop in a waterfall. I'll leave a link in the description box below and in the cards above if you want to check out that video. And third, there's also smaller sprinter vans that only hold about 10 people. Oftentimes these tours can be booked completely private, so it's really just your group and the tour guide. If you're interested in doing a private tour, I'll leave a link in the description box below for a tour that I did that does private tours and in the cards above. Also, let's play this out. Let's pretend that you decide on the middle option. You're looking for an island tour that is a mini coach, reasonably priced, and you want to see a lot of the island. So ballpark, there might be at max capacity 25 guests on the tour. Keep in mind that just because there's 25 people on the tour, it does not mean that you're going to be with those 25 people field trip style at each individual stop. Typically on island tours, what happens is the tour guide will narrate to each of the different stops. You'll get to a specific stop. The tour guide will say, we'll be at the stop for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, whatever the designated time is. And then everybody from the bus gets off the bus and explores that specific area on their own. It's not 25 of you walking around the specific stop all together the entire time. That's a very common misconception, but it's not really true. However, typically, the smaller the tour group, the more expensive the tour. So if you're on a budget, a motor coach tour on a bigger tour bus might be a great choice. Now, another thing to keep in mind is if anyone in your group has either mobility issues or needs an ADA compliant bus for a wheelchair, typically a motor coach would be the best option. A lot of motor coaches have ramps or wheelchair lifts, and you'll need one of those if there is somebody in the party that needs an ADA compliant bus. But not all motor coaches have this, so if you need special accommodation for your tour group, make sure to request this at least 72 hours in advance or put it in your booking notes, so that way the tour company can reserve a special ADA bus for you folks. Also, some motor coach buses have bathrooms on board. If that's important, make sure to double check if your specific tour bus has a bathroom on board. Again, not all motor coaches do, however, some do. Now, as I mentioned, I've done a lot of island tours. Here are 3 island tours recently that we've done and filmed. The first one is a general island tour that stops at a waterfall. It was in a mini coach bus with at max capacity 25 people. Option number 2 was a small group private island tour that focused mostly on the north shore of the island, and that was in a sprinter van. And number 3 is this small group island tour that focused only on one section of the island. This half-day tour focused on just the east coast of the island, and it was a small group tour. Our tour group had only 8 people total. Question number 4, what is included in the island tour? As in, are there any additional charges? So one thing that I've noticed is some island tours have a low sticker price, but there's always additional charges later on. So originally, you might look at an island tour and think it's a great inexpensive tour, but once you start to tack on the additional admissions, lunch, etc., it all adds up. This is important to note because you might initially purchase a cheaper tour, but will end up feeling like you were nickeled and dimed the entire tour, so the cheaper tour actually isn't that cheap at all. I'll give you a good example of an all-inclusive tour. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that I did an island tour that included a stop at a waterfall. This specific tour was on a mini coach with 25 people, so it was a mid-range size tour, and it was all-inclusive. That means that it included my lunch, which was $15 for my plate of garlic shrimp, $2 for my soda. It included admission to the Byodo-in Temple, which is $4. It included admission into Waimea Valley, which is $20 for visitors. So total for all that is $41. The tour itself only runs about $130. So if you think about $130 or so total for the tour and everything that I mentioned, the tour is a good value. If you're getting value from this, hit the like button. It'll help you find more videos like this one. Question number 5, where does the tour actually stop? Now, this is something that I would hear many times when I worked as a concierge in the past. Oftentimes people would purchase a tour that had a long list of points of interest, but not necessarily stops. Make sure to read the itinerary to see if it's an actual stop or just a drive-by. For example, some tours will list Haleiwa, which is a town up on the North Shore, on their itinerary, but if you look closely, it's only a drive-through, as in a narrated point and see, not necessarily a stop where you will physically get off the bus to explore that specific area. This is also really common for North Shore surfing beaches during our big wave surf season. Island tours will mention North Shore big wave surf beaches, but if you look closely at the itinerary, not all tours will actually stop at those beaches so that way you can watch the big wave surf. Some of them will simply point out the big wave surf and continue driving. So if certain stops are important to you, a good question to ask is, where does the island tour actually stop where I will get off the bus? Now, keep in mind, most tours have a list of set stops that they're able to go to, and depending on time constraints, sometimes there's an impromptu stop here or there. Some island tours are all-encompassing. They show everything on the island, and then they'll also stop at a waterfall to swim. Other island tours will include a stop to snorkel. And some island tours are combo tours that show you on the island but also stop at Pearl Harbor. I hope you guys liked this video and found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And if there's any other Hawaii videos you'd like to see, definitely leave them in the comments down below.